This is the Ramana Maharshi Essence of Instruction satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and to deeply inquire into the self. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke, and welcome. I'm hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice that I bring to the satsang. And this week, I will introduce you to the Ramana Maharshi text, Essence of Instruction, or Upadesa Saram in Sanskrit, and Upadesha Unidar in Tamil. Now, here I want to show you a photograph of the great Tamil poet Muruganar. He came to Ramana Maharshi in 1923 and immediately became his follower, saying that Ramana was the guru that he had been seeking. All the pictures of him are like this one, in which I see this deep kind of intensity that he has. And he became Ramana's most devoted follower and stayed with Ramana until Ramana's Mahasamadhi in 1950. During this time, he wrote thousands of poems to Ramana. He also collected bits of Ramana's dialogues over the 27 years they were together, confirmed each of them with Ramana, and put them into the book Guru Vachaka Kolai that has more than 1,200 of these sayings, and it's the most extensive collection of Ramana's wisdom. Okay. Now, this is the kind of background to this book. Muruganar in 1927 was composing a poem based on an ancient legend about a group of ascetics who were performing various rites and rituals in the Daruka forest. These ascetics believed that karma, the path of action, is God. They believed that by performing ritual austerities through their own will and action, they could attain cities, powers, and happiness. They arrogantly believed that their efforts in performing karma rituals were bound to yield fruit, and that even gods could not prevent it. Lord Shiva then appeared in the Durga forest to deflate the pride of these ascetics and to offer them the right instruction so they could all be liberated. When Muruganar got to this part of the poem he wanted to write, he felt unable to express the words of Shiva. And since Ramana Maharshi was self-realized, Muruganar thought that he was not different from Shiva. So who better to pen Shiva's instruction than Sri Ramana? He asked Ramana, who accepted and wrote out the 30 verses in one setting, discussing them with Muruganar as he composed the verses. These verses show the progression of spiritual practice through the four stages or paths, the four margas, to self-realization. These four stages have long been defined in Vedic culture as karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, and jnana yoga. These are the paths of action, love, mental discipline, and experiential knowledge, as distinguished from cognitive understanding. Even though self realization or Atmayana is attained only through the highest path of self inquiry, Lord Shiva knew that this was beyond the scope of these ascetics due to their current spiritual immaturity and the gross state of their minds. Such minds need to be refined and made pure so they can dive deeper and understand true inquiry. They had to be made ready. So the first three paths were given so they could prepare and purify their minds: karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and raja yoga. This shows that Ramana's approach was broad and encompassing. He did not advocate the path of self inquiry alone, though he strongly recommended it. He welcomed and guided every kind of seeker, irrespective of whether he was a beginner or advanced, whether yogi, bhakta, or yani, though his main emphasis was always the path of self inquiry. He knew that self inquiry required maturity of understanding. That's why he prescribed the three margas, these other three paths, as preparation when needed. Ramana showed that all paths, including the indirect ones like karma, bhakti, and yoga, must be respected and even be embraced in order for the seeker to be ready for the direct path of self inquiry. He clearly stated this in Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, number 27. These are what's recorded in Talks. If, however, the aspirant is not temperamentally suited to Vichara Marga, self inquiry, he must develop bhakti, devotion to an ideal, maybe God, guru, humanity in general, ethical laws, or even the idea of beauty. When one of these takes possession of the individual, other attachments grow weaker. In the absence of inquiry and devotion, the natural sedative pranayama, breath regulation, may be tried. This is known as yoga marga. If an aspirant be unsuited temporarily for the first two methods and circumstantially, for example, on account of age, for the third method, he must try karma marga, doing good deeds, for example, social services. His nobler instincts become more evident, and he derives impersonal pleasure. His smaller self is less assertive and has a chance of expanding its good side. After maturation, though, the preparatory margas, karma, bhakti, and raja, the path of self inquiry comes naturally as the seeker is ready to make the inquiry into the self. A blend of various paths is needed since the capacity of seekers differ depending on their temperament, natural inclination, or their present level of understanding. These four yogas naturally lead the seeker through the practices. When the seeker is purified through karma yoga, he naturally develops love for God, and spontaneously bhakti appears. When they mature in bhakti, then mental discipline and meditation comes naturally. When these mature, the seeker finds jnana, self-knowledge and self-realization seems to appear. It seems to appear, but it's always been there, just covered over with false ideas. These yogas, practiced with dedication, perseverance, and devotion, will open the doors of self-inquiry. The problem with many Westerners is they want to jump up to a high practice like Jnana Marga without preparation, and they just get stuck. This is the way that some contemporary teachers, like the Neo-Advaitins, present Ramana Maharshi's teaching as something that comes in an instant of realization and can change you forever without any prior practice or preparation. What I noticed talking with people I knew like this while I lived in India is they may have had a high moment and then couldn't sustain it. It came in a flash. Maybe they held it for a bit, then it went away. They reported being happy when the teacher was there and they were listening to them, but they couldn't repeat the experience when they were away from the teacher, since he had not given them a practice they could continue with to sustain and develop their experience. I want to present the essence of instruction. I want to open your understanding of these four paths. It may be that you are one of these stuck at some level. So instead of jumping up, you may need to practice these preparatory paths. It also may give you a perspective on your own spiritual journey. Whatever is your practice, it's important that you open yourself to its experience, not just the mental knowledge of it. It is from this experience and resultant self-knowledge that spiritual growth and practice happens. Now I have a couple of videos for you, and the first is from Swami Adi Shakti, and he did a series on this book, and we will be using things from his video as we go along. Here's his introduction.
Hello, namaste. Welcome to the introduction to Upadesha Undiyar, which means the essence of instruction, by Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. This is a very wonderful and important book, and it's extremely appropriate for the situation today. And you'll see as we get into it how nicely it addresses the major issues in spirituality all over the world today. So Ramana was very perceptive, and he knew which teaching would be appropriate for us, and he got it exactly right. Upadesha. Upadesha means instruction. And if you actually dissect the word upa, means coming closer. And desha means a location, a place. So upadesha is what brings you closer to your destination. And sometimes the word undiyar, it's a Tamil word, is translated the essence, sara in Sanskrit. The same book is also known as Upadesha Sara in Sanskrit. So in Tamil it's Upadesha Undiyar. And it was written by Sri Ramana about 1934 with the help and consultation of Sri Muruganar. Sri Muruganar was really his first and principal disciple in many ways. And he was a great scholar, a wonderful poet. He had so many good qualities. So he helped Ramana write his early books and certainly helped him become established as a teacher. Because if a person of the stature of Muruganar became his disciple, then who wouldn't, right? So anyway, the essence of instruction is about right view. Now in the Buddha's teaching is the Eightfold Path. And the very first step is right view. The last step is right concentration, which leads to enlightenment. That's the 8th step of the Eightfold Path. But the first step is right view. And this is what everybody gets wrong. They take some half-baked theories and some popularizations of the actual view, misunderstand it, and then go running with that up the other stages, trying to get to right livelihood, right effort, and so on, until they reach right concentration, and then they fall down. Boom. So, in this book, Sri Bhagwan is going to give us the right view. But first, we have to deconstruct all the wrong views. And the wrong views fall into 4 categories. All of them are called upadi. Upadi is sometimes translated limiting adjunct. Sri Bhagwan used to call it superimposition. That's a good translation, superimposition. Because everything is Brahman. Everything is Brahman. But superimposed over it are these upadis, these differences and other things. It's really just ignorance, okay? Just ignorance. So we see all kinds of names and forms and actions and movements and locations and stuff and things and whatever. Individuals and personalities and so on. But it's all just upadi. It's all just wrong view. So let me read the technical definition of upadi. A superimposed thing or attribute that veils and gives a colored view of the substance beneath it. A limiting adjunct. Look up that word adjunct. It's interesting. An instrument, a vehicle, a body. A technical term used in Vedanta philosophy for any superimposition that gives a limited view of the absolute and makes it appear as the relative. Jiva's upadi is avidya, nescience or ignorance. Ishwara's upadi is maya. Very powerful statements, very powerful views. So jiva is already an upadi. Jiva means reflection of Brahman in the tiny mirror of a mind and ego, personality. Like the reflection of the moon in a tiny puddle after a rainstorm. It looks like the moon, but it's not the moon, And it can't be used for the purposes of the moon either, which is to give coolness and a heavenly destination and so on. So similarly, the jiva, the individual being, is a reflection of Brahman in the limited space of the mind and personality. It's an upadhi, something that covers the substrate, the real substrate of consciousness. And like a pair of blinders, you can only see a narrow range of vision through the consciousness of a jiva, although that consciousness is absolutely qualitatively identical with Brahman. So, from the point of view of Brahman, the upadhi is Maya, the illusory potency that creates all of these individual, limited beings and their infinitesimal consciousness out of the one whole of all consciousness with objectless awareness. That's Brahman. So the difference is Brahman is in control of Maya. Maya is also known as the goddess, his pleasure potency. So it's just Maya's play, Maya's entertainment, all of this manifestation, all this what we call suffering and bondage and release. The whole drama is simply play, lila. That's not serious. Don't take it serious. Brahman doesn't. It's just entertainment. It's just to pass the time. So don't get caught up in these pastimes. Instead, realize your identity with Brahman and be free. That's the process of self-realization. So, meanwhile, we have 4 types or classifications of false paths to enlightenment. And these, once you hear them, you'll be able to understand, are like 99% of everything that's promoted as self-realization, enlightenment, meditation, religion, and so forth. So let's go through them. 4 wrong processes of self-realization. The right process of self-realization is simply removing the upadhi, removing the blocks to our clear view of self as Brahman. And the wrong views, the wrong paths, the counterfeit paths to enlightenment are of 4 types: production, transformation, purification, and acquisition. So I'm going to briefly explain these, and then to recognize them in various teachings is an exercise for the viewer. Okay. So first of all, production. Production means that enlightenment is something new. We're going to produce or create or manufacture or make enlightenment. Abracadabra. Poof, I'm enlightened. So this is wrong because, as I mentioned in the beginning, enlightenment has to be eternal, beginningless, unlimited in the present, and endless in the future. Otherwise, it's not really enlightenment. It's something else. Anything that has a beginning has an end. So if our enlightenment has a beginning, if it has to be created somehow, then it will also have an end. So whatever it is, seeing lights, feeling energy rushes in the body, kundalini, so many things, samadhi, all of these things have a beginning and an end. They're limited. They can't be made permanent because their nature is not fully Brahman. They may be a better or more accurate or more powerful reflection of Brahman, but they're still an upadi, they're still a narrowed view, they're still not the real thing. So the next one is transformation. We hear this a lot in New Age circles. Oh, the transformation that's going to bring you to enlightenment. No. What are we going to transform that becomes enlightenment? The ego? The mind? The body? Come on. It's not possible. How can you transform something which is of the essence of an upadi, a block to perception of Brahman? How can you transform that into something that reveals Brahman? It's not possible. So then there's purification. Now, many paths of religion talk about purification, but the same argument applies. You're going to purify what into what? You're going to purify the mind into Brahman? Come on, it's not possible. The mind is exactly what is blocking Brahman from our vision. So similarly with acquisition, I'm going to get enlightenment. I'm going to attain enlightenment. I'm going to achieve enlightenment. You hear yogis talk this way a lot because their process is based on will. I'm going to do pranayama until I turn blue. Oh, you're going to become Krishna, right? No, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because we already have it. We already have enlightenment. How can we acquire something we already have? It's nonsense. So, these are just the simple explanations, and we'll go into it deeply while we're going through the book. Meanwhile, just try to consider this. I'm just a friend, and I'm just sharing what I'm doing because it's beautiful and I love it, and I want you to have it too and enjoy it and get the benefit that I have from this wonderful teaching. So please, don't approach me like a guru or a teacher or any kind of authority or anything like that. I'm not a representative of any organization. I'm not trying to build a group or anything like that. I mean, if you want to come here and get counseling, that's fine. I'll try my best to encourage you and expose you to the authentic sources of these teachings. But I'm not any kind of authority, and I'm not trying to run any kind of trip on anybody. I just want to share what has been so wonderful for me and such a blessing in my life. So please take this video in that spirit, and then we'll get along fine, okay? Namaste, Tat Sat, Om Harihi Om.
And now we will hear from my teacher, Nomi, who talks about who is Sri Ramana.
Today is Guru Purnima, yet the Purnam, or perfection, the perfect fullness of the Guru, Sri Bhagavan, is always. Who is Sri Ramana? Silence is perhaps the most eloquent expression of that, the truth of the Maharshi. In order to know him as he is, why, this is knowing God as God is, one must first relinquish any limitations on one's own vision. Approach as a body, one sees a body. Approach as an individual, one sees some other kind of individual. But he is not the body, and he transcends individuality or egoity entirely. The removal of one's own definition by virtue of inquiry into oneself or by deep devotion results in an absorption in the truth that he is. That is the truth of the self. The way to know what he is to know your own being. Of course, it is by his grace and his teachings put into practice, that is, by self-inquiry and its resultant self-knowledge, that you know yourself. If we approach as someone seeking the truth, then he is the guru that reveals the truth, a Sadguru, a true guru that reveals the truth. If seeking that truth within ourselves, the form of the seeker is dissolved, what then remains? The greatness of that, the bliss of that, the truth of that cannot be conceived, much less described. From the position that is the imagined perspective of identifying oneself as an embodied individual, who he is, what that Brahman is difficult to grasp. If the I am the body conception is abandoned, and the ego is destroyed by seeking its source, by knowing its nature, then the truth of Sri Ramana is self-evident. To whom is it self-evident? To him, of course. Because if this truth is realized, that is the truth of the self within you, if the self that he knows and declares himself to be is realized within yourself, there remains nothing to you but him, that, the one absolute. Again, as long as we think in terms of individuals, this would seem utterly impossible. Abandon the false ego notion by inquiry to see what it is, and what's being indicated is self-evident. Though he is the one by whose wisdom the truth is revealed, and by whose grace everything is cared for, he is also that undivided, undifferentiated, birthless, imperishable existence, which is the only reality. To imagine yourself to be something other than that is a case of misidentification or ignorance, the cause of bondage and its resultant suffering. Meditating on the teaching he has imparted about knowing oneself, bondage proves to be an illusion, ignorance only imagination. The very seed or potential of suffering is done away with. And the ability to misidentify is utterly lost. So what can we say about the Maharshi, who he is? He is a jnani, a great sage. Yes, but more than that. He is a Sadguru who liberates from the imagined bondage all who seek him. Yet he is more than that. He stands as that which transcends the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleep. That is, stands beyond the mind and the body and the senses and everything else, including all the forms of this world. Yet he is something greater than that. He is that which is unborn and indestructible, the timeless, the spaceless. Yet even this does not adequately describe him. Consider this the next time you use his name, think about him, read a book about him, read something of his teachings. So who is Sri Ramana? You had best find that out within yourself. While inquiring within yourself, to know yourself.
And now we are going to take a few minutes for ourselves to do that kind of inquiry that Ramana and Nomi talk about. Just relax, take a deep breath, feel it in and out, and notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist without thinking about it, without sensing it. You just know you exist. And now inquire, investigate within yourself. Are you this body? Does the body know you, or do you know the body? The body changes. Do you, who you are, change? Are you the senses? Again, you know the senses. Do the senses know you? The senses come and go. Do you come and go? Are you the life force that flows within the body, the blood, the heartbeat, the breathing? These always change. Do you change? You know them. How can they be who you are? Are you a thought? Which thought could you be? Could you be a collection of thoughts? You know your thoughts. Your thoughts only have the power you give them. So you're not the thought. You know the thought. Are you the intellect? The part of your mind that makes order out of all of these thoughts and creates the idea of the world and yourself as an individual. Again, you know these ideas from the intellect. You know this idea of yourself as an individual. Could you be this individual? You know this individual. Does the individual know you? Behind all of these body, senses, life force, thought, and intellect, there is a quiet peace and blankness. Are you this quiet peace and blankness? All of these states are known. Are you that which knows all of these? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? All right. Now let's close with a short chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. All right. Are there any questions or comments or dialogue?
I think it's going to be interesting to go through this book. I don't know the book at all, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm also interested, like you. This is one of the books of Ramana's that I know the least. And part of my interest in doing this series is to get to know the book better.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with the 4 stages, and recognizing that bhakti was one of my stages, and probably still is.
Uh-huh.
And yet things seem to sort of overlap too. There's not any real clear cut. Well, that's yeah.
Uh-huh.
And, but I like that last piece there. Was are you the blankness or the peace? Yes, that's a very good question. And
yes.
And obviously I can't be, because I know
Well,
it.
the blankness is something that you know.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I had not addressed that.
And so it's still, you have to keep going deeper.
Yeah.
That blankness was the highest goal of Buddhism for a very long time.
Yeah.
But then the Mahayanas also discovered that blankness was something they knew, so there had to be more.
Yes. And even as much as we hear the word peace applied so many ways, and sometimes like peace is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the sense of peace is known, so it must be something beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think it's wonderful we have these kind of teachings to help point the way.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Yes.
It is amazing.
Yes, it is. Anyway, thank you for joining me today, and we will continue this adventure in the following weeks.
Very good. I really look forward to it.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.